So you're watching the World Cup, right? You see the vibrant, multicultural face of modern football. You see teams like Brazil and Colombia, their rosters just packed with this rich, mixed heritage. And then you see Argentina. And if you've ever looked at their team photo and had that little thought in the back of your head like, wait a minute, something's different here, well, you've stumbled upon one of football's biggest and most fascinating historical puzzles.
All right, let's just set the stage here. On the global scene, South American football is this brilliant mosaic of talent. So many of these teams are a direct reflection of their country's diverse, multiracial identity. But for decades now, there's been one very glaring exception.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. On one side, you've got these football powerhouses whose entire history is tangled up with black icons. You know, Brazil's Pelé, Colombia's Faustino Asprilla, and on the other side, you have Argentina, where black players on the national team have been, throughout history, pretty much non-existent. So what on earth explains that massive difference?
To figure this out, we can't just look at today's team. Nope, we have to go digging. We have to look into a chapter of Argentina's past that, for a lot of people, has been very intentionally buried and forgotten.
Now, you might be thinking the simple answer is, well, maybe Argentina just never had a large black population to begin with, right? It seems logical, almost kind of obvious. But the historical truth is the complete opposite of that. The reality is that colonial Argentina was absolutely built on the labor of enslaved Africans.
And the scale of this is just staggering. At its peak, over a third of the capital, Buenos Aires, was black. In some of the northern provinces, that number climbed as high as 50%, half the population. So this changes the question entirely. It's not why are there no black players? The real question is, what happened to this entire population?
And the answer? Well, it's pretty dark. The Afro-Argentine population didn't just fade away naturally. Their disappearance was sped up by two devastating forces: brutal nation-building wars and deadly waves of disease. And here's the kicker: neither one of these was really an accident.
So you can really see this unfold throughout the 19th century. When slavery was abolished, freedom came with a deadly catch. You had to serve in the military. Black men were sent to the front lines in insane numbers. The famous Army of the Andes that crossed the mountains, 2/3 black. And of the 2,500 black soldiers who marched, only 143 returned alive. This pattern of using black soldiers as, frankly, cannon fodder just continued for decades. And for those who survived the wars, a yellow fever epidemic in 1871 swept right through the segregated black neighborhoods.
But look, this was more than just a physical loss of life. It was happening at the same time as a deliberate, state-sponsored campaign to literally erase Argentina's African heritage from its very identity.
The policy was called blanqueamiento, or whitening, and the goal was brutally simple: dilute the existing African and indigenous populations by flooding the country with European immigrants. And wow, was it effective. Between 1860 and 1914 alone, 4 million Europeans arrived. It forever changed the face of the nation, and it was all by design. And this wasn't some quiet, backroom political idea. This was state doctrine. They wrote it directly into the nation's constitution. Amendment 25 explicitly says the government shall foster European immigration. And get this, that amendment is still there today.
And if there was any doubt at all about the real intent here, just listen to this chilling quote from a former president, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento. He said, "20 years hence, it will be necessary to travel to Brazil to see blacks." I mean, it doesn't get much clearer or more chilling than that. The goal wasn't just dilution, it was total erasure.
And this project of erasure was just relentless. By 1895, the government simply stopped counting Afro-Argentines in the census. Poof! They were statistically invisible. Fast forward a century to the 1990s, and you have President Carlos Menem publicly declaring, in Argentina, blacks do not exist. This commitment to a white European identity went so far that after World War II, the country became a notorious safe haven for Nazi war criminals.
Okay, so how does all of this long, dark, complicated history circle back to a football pitch in the 21st century? Well, the connection is startlingly direct. The numbers today are just stark. The last official census found the Afro-Argentine population was less than half of 1%. Then, a recent study looked at the country's top football leagues and found the exact same figure among its players. The football pitch is a perfect mirror of the demographic reality that history created. And it's not just a numbers game from the past. Modern systemic barriers are still in place that keep that number so low. Getting into elite youth academies often requires money and social connections that marginalized communities just don't have. Plus, when black players do appear in Argentina's leagues, they're often from other countries, which only reinforces that powerful national myth that to be truly Argentine is to be white.
And this cultural erasure goes so far beyond the football pitch. I mean, take the tango, Argentina's most famous cultural export. Historians now know that its origins are deeply rooted in the candombe dances of Afro-Argentine communities. That's a foundational truth that has been almost completely scrubbed from the national story.
So, that empty space on Argentina's team photo isn't just about football. It's an echo of a lost population and a buried history. Which leaves all of us with a final, really big question. If football is a mirror that reflects a nation's identity, what happens when that nation has forced itself to forget a fundamental part of who it once was?